Jason? You're Jason.
The cryptic Morphin Grid has been making little cameos throughout the Power Rangers' 30 years, leaving clues here and there about its actual nature. It comes in different shapes and forms, or none at all. But not to worry, I've made that little enigma my mission to solve. Today, I will explain the results of my secret investigation into the Morphin Grid, the source of the Power Rangers' mighty powers. In this video, you'll learn how the Morphin Grid is a network entity, and how it reaches its branches throughout the edge of the galaxy using cool gadgets and weapons. Now grab your Morphers, cause it's Morphin time!
Unleash the power!
Before we jump right into the complex beast that is the Morphin Grid, let me start with the basics. As I'll explain a bit later on in this video, the grid sometimes has various physical forms, and sometimes it just kinda doesn't. Let's just say it's flexible for now. What's most important about it is that it acts as the source of the Power Rangers' powers, but also of villains like Lord Zed or Rita Repulsa. It's neither good nor evil, but two sides of the same coin. The Morphin Grid is kinda similar to DC's Speed Force, which is an energy field giving the Flash or his nemesis Godspeed their super speed abilities. Another good and obvious example of this would be the Force in Star Wars, with both its light and dark sides being two parts of a whole. Think of the grid as some energy field that reaches its branches across the multiverse and beyond time. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
That's not how the Force works.
Wrong Force. Regardless, the origin of the Morphin Grid is shrouded in mystery. All we really know in this area is that the grid is maintained by a balance between the most important forces of good and evil. Zordon representing its good side, while Zed being the face of its evil side. The idea of balance between good and evil shows up a few times during the series. In the episode Wild West Rangers, Zordon forbids Kimberly, who traveled through time, to give her ancestor a second pink power coin because, according to the floating head, too much pink energy is dangerous. Come on, Zordon, pink's not just for girls. Another good example is the fight between Trent the White Ranger and his clone in Dino Thunder. The Ranger clone loses energy the closer he is to the original one. Not exactly a fair fight, but as Connor McLeod would say, there can be only one. Now, if you're a true Power Rangers fan, you must be like, but what about the team crossover episodes, huh? Well, here's where things get kinda interesting. Two pink pterodactyl rangers will cause imbalance in the Morphin Grid, since there's only one zone available for it, if you picture an actual grid. Just think about 9th grade math class for that one. But one pterodactyl pink ranger fighting side by side with a pink turbo ranger will not cause any short circuits in the grid. Why? Because they don't exist in the same energy zone, having different costumes and all. It's unclear what would happen if the Morphin Grid is pulled out of balance, but Pink Ranger Jen Scotts theorized about it in the comic book's Shattered Grid. She believes that the grid has the ability to manipulate the space-time continuum. If this is true, then the universe could be pulled into chaos as time would unfold onto itself, creating God knows what horrors. So, the Morphin Grid is an energy field with no real center, and grows like branches of a tree across space, time, and humans or aliens. It has the power to create new forms of life and new ranger types, collecting their data into frames of its grid. That baby never stops growing. Now that I told you about the ghostly nature of the Morphin Grid, let's take a look at all the different ways it reaches our Rangers. How exactly do they access that specific zone of power? The answer is simple. Devices, devices, devices. Oh, you want devices? You name them, well, the Power Rangers, they got them. They got Morphers, they got power coins, they got crystals, power discs, keys, gems, cards, prisms, chips, and much, much, much more. Let's just say the grid can be accessed through a whole bunch of different ways. Now, these devices are just bridges, making it easier to access the grid. The true point of entry to the grid is in fact the Rangers themselves. Humans and aliens alike, it doesn't really matter. The first time a Ranger taps into the Morphin Grid using whatever device they're handed, the powers that come from the grid enters into and out of the Ranger's cellular makeup as they transform or go back to their initial human form. Let's take another example from the original Pink Ranger to support that claim. Yeah, I like Kimberly, who doesn't? In the episode Changing of the Zords, Kimberly's power coin is replaced by a fake one by the then evil Catherine Hillard. This switch seems to corrupt Kimberly's link to the grid as she not only becomes weaker when battling as the Pink Ranger, but also in her everyday life. This proves that the link to the grid might be amplified by using the Morphers, but in reality has been encrypted into Kimberly's own DNA. The grid is her, and she is the grid. Being a ranger is no easy task. As the sometimes black, sometimes green Ranger Adam learns in Power Rangers in space, his body is not only linked to the Morphin Grid, but also to his Morpher. Alpha 6 warns him that using a damaged Morpher could literally kill him.
Which means morphing could destroy you.
Well, the robot was almost right as the Ranger lost most of his powers and got really knocked out good. Ouch. Things get just a little bit crazier in Dino Thunder when we learn that the only way to quit being a Dino Ranger is, well, to destroy the Ranger. Someone should have read the fine print. The energy field also seems to take damage for the Rangers when they take a hit. Sparks fly, and the bodies of the Rangers, while out of energy, don't have a single scratch on them. As I'll explain later, electrical damage seems to represent the Morphin Grid being damaged, making these skin-tight Ranger costumes the grid's actual skin. From the costumes to the devices and the Rangers themselves, every single element is connected to the Morphin Grid, and permanently so. No takebacks allowed. Now, how would an immaterial being be damaged? I think Alpha 6 has an idea or two about that one.
I've never actually been inside the grid before, but I'll try my best.
In the episode Once a Ranger, Alpha 6 is summoned to help the gang get their powers back as the Morphin Grid has been damaged. The Rangers themselves can't access the grid's physical form, while they're able to see it through a monitor. Alpha on the other side is teleported inside the grid in hopes of fixing it. The damaged grid looks like a sort of endless tunnel, probably storing an unfathomable amount of information about the Power Rangers. Thankfully, our trustworthy robot boy Alpha fixes the grid, saving the day once more. So the grid can be damaged, but where exactly is it situated? Years earlier, the grid made an appearance in Dino Thunder, when Tommy hid a physical version of it in the Cyber Cafe for reasons. Anyway, Blue Ranger Ethan finds what looks like a boulder with a gem on it. The gem acts as a sort of crystal ball, giving the Ranger a glimpse into future Power Rangers battles, while storing the Ranger's current memories inside of it. Okay, so far I've explained how the grid is an endless tunnel, but also a boulder with a gem on it. I know, this seems to have plot hole written all over it, but today's video is not that kind of video. Hear me out. I believe that the Morphin Grid is a sentient entity, capable of creating parts of itself in any form that it wishes. After all, it has been proven that it does hold the power to manipulate matter. It's been shown producing flowers outside the command center, clothing, and even decorations or presents in that Christmas special. What would stop it from producing as many versions of itself as it sees fit? The grid takes a whole new form in Power Rangers Beast Morphers. The organization Grid Battle Force creates a green liquid called Morph X, which acts as an energy source that powers both the city of Coral Harbor and the Power Rangers themselves. In this version, the Rangers fight against Evox, an evil cobra-looking virus who wishes to take over the power of the grid for itself. Again, this shows how the grid is a fragile thing, always threatening to endanger the world if unbalanced, whichever way towards good or evil. It makes me wonder if everyone wouldn't be safer without the Morphin Grid in the first place. The most recent incarnation of the Morphin Grid takes the form of the Solarix. Now, to understand the Solarix, let me tell you a bit more about that wondrous, decaying place called the Void. The Void appears in the 2018 comic book version of the show called Shattered Grid. It's the name of an unknown dimension that was left to rot by the Morphin Masters in order to protect the grid. They decided to cut the universe's connection to the Morphin Grid in order to protect the splintered star from villains who are after its powerful Zeo crystals. Well, talk about an overreaction. Now, since the link to the Morphin Grid has been disabled, does that mean that no Power Rangers can transform in this area of the multiverse? Well, that is where the Purple Ranger Ilarion comes in. Ilarion, or the Solar Ranger, owns a Hyperforce morpher called the Solarix. This device has been confirmed to be a physical shard of the actual Morphin Grid. Whether it's from the tunnel, the boulder, or any other material source stays unconfirmed. The comic book mentions that the Morpher uses vortex energy from the Void to feed itself, which means that while the connection to the grid has been severed, there is still some grid energy left in that dimension. Now, what's really cool about this device, and I'm sure you can hear the excitement in my voice, is that it's alive. This further supports the fact that the Morphin Grid is sentient, as the Solarix has a mind of its own. The Solar Ranger even mentions how Solarix calls out to her, which makes sense that it's a part of her and all. Still a better love story than Twilight. Before we leave things off, I want to propose another theory. In Shattered Grid, Zordon mentions that he would sacrifice his future in the grid when he requests an audience with the Morphing Masters, meaning that he would literally join the grid when he meets his end, just like certain Jedi become one with the Force when they die. Since the grid affects the Rangers on a molecular level, does the grid feed off of them? That would explain why some Rangers can access older Rangers' powers, or even summon older Rangers from the grid itself. After all, isn't it a bit fishy that the original Red Ranger Jason can be summoned through the grid by Devin and Beast Morphers? Was he just dormant, hanging out inside the grid waiting to be activated? It's kinda scary if you ask me. Well, I hope this answers some of your burning questions about the Morphin Grid, or at least sparked some new theories. Keep the discussion going in the comments below and hit that subscribe button for more CBR videos. Thanks a lot for joining the investigation, and as always, thanks a lot for watching.